world is changing fast. New technologies are impacting how we think about products, services, and the way we live our lives. Nowhere is this trend more present than in financial services, where new business models and customer expectations are changing our conceptions about banking, finance, and the very nature of money. Welcome to Rebank, a visionary podcast about banking, fintech, and the future. The future of banking is here. Hello and welcome to Rebank. I'm your host, Will Beeson. Today we're joined by Zeeshan Feroz, UK CEO of Coinbase, the world's leading consumer crypto company. In this conversation, we discuss Coinbase's recent progress and future plans, the current state of the crypto industry, and what the lasting impact of this wave of crypto innovation will be. As always, connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, or on our website at bankingthefuture.com. Thank you very much for joining us today. Please welcome Zeeshan Feroz. Zeeshan, welcome to Rebank.
Thank you.
It's great to connect with you. And here we are in London. So Coinbase, the kind of crypto wallet to end all crypto wallets. I'm sure you will explain to me how far Coinbase has come since it was just a crypto wallet and all the work you guys have done over the past few years. U.S. company, but you guys have built a pretty significant London presence. Tell me about your role and kind of Coinbase's presence here in the UK.
Sure. Europe is one of our fastest growing markets now, and it's the largest market outside of the US. So we made a deliberate decision a couple of years ago to enter Europe and to extend our products to this markets. And it's been an incredible journey over the last 2 years as we've grown from a small one-person office to the team we have here today. It's Europe serves as London particularly serves as our hub for Europe, as our headquarters over here, and also as an engineering hub for us. So it's the only significant engineering presence we have outside of San Francisco. What motivated that? I think London generally is just the perfect melting pot of financial services and tech talent that we needed, and the right regulation to start and build a crypto business. Mm-hmm.
So you said you've grown from 2 employees when you set up over here to something like 50 now.
We're definitely growing very quickly, and the number is if you ask me how many employees we have last week, it'll be different to how many we have today. We've got new people joining every week.
Yeah. Excellent. So, all right, just to kind of set the scene. Catch us up on the state of crypto. We on the podcast connect with crypto specialists from time to time. Good friend Lex Sokolin. We've had B2C2 on the podcast before. We've had Circle on the podcast before. And given the fast-moving nature of the space, it's always worthwhile to just kind of start with what's happened over the past month or two. What are people focused on? What's the pulse of the space?
There's never a dull moment in crypto, is there? There's so much news, particularly on a regulation front, that's coming out over the last few months. I think, speaking from the view of our universe, we as a business have continued to keep our heads down and focus on what we see as a potential in crypto, and that's to build an ecosystem and a new financial system that extends beyond just the investment potential, but actually moves to driving utility and real-world use cases. And I think the theme we have seen and we continue to see is actually some exciting products starting to emerge, some real projects that have promise and that will continue, hopefully, to drive user adoption in the future. So that's what we're focused on, and we're starting to see more in the space.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. So, I guess as we start, it might be nice for context to share some relevant Coinbase metrics. What are some of the highlights? I don't know, capital raised or customers or transaction volumes. How do you kind of describe the scale of what you guys have built?
That's an interesting question. So One thing that always fascinates me is, and we've actually published a blog post on this a couple of days ago, is just how Coinbase as a business is grown in terms of verticals it operates in. So if you wind back the clock, say 3 years, Coinbase was a wallet based for consumers. And that created a natural need for us to have an exchange because we had a lot of buy and sell pressure coming from the consumer side. So we launched an exchange. Today, Coinbase brand extends to almost over 10 different businesses that range from our consumer offerings. So you have Coinbase Consumer, you have Coinbase Wallet, you have our merchant solution, which is Coinbase Commerce, all the way down to the institutional side of the spectrum, where we're building custody, where we've our exchange has grown up to become now Coinbase Pro, Coinbase Prime, and our index fund, as well as our ventures arm that's made over 15 investments in the last few months. So I think what's most interesting here is how the business has grown to fill gaps and to address opportunities in the market over just in the last 12 months. We service on the consumer side, which is our most popular, where the brand had its beginning. We service over 20 million clients today. And in terms of stats from a EU perspective, the EU grew twice as fast as the US as a market for us. So our user acquisition and our the activity we saw on the platform from European customers far outpaced what we saw in the US.
Over what time period?
Last year. Yeah. So it's been as a business, it's funny because last year around this time, as the market was rallying quite strongly, it was we were just trying to cope with the number of users that were just signing up to the service, in a day. And our operations were not designed to cater to a business this size. So scaling up has been the most interesting thing we've done this year.
So do you view this as kind of a part of the natural hype cycle, like initial kind of boom, euphoria, consumers chasing speculative returns, sell off, interest kind of goes elsewhere, but those who are serious about this are really kind of retrenching, building infrastructure that's going to support the industry for decades to come. I mean, is that kind of where we are in your view?
That's exactly right. Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of the activity, a lot of the people that came into this space last year were driven by the investment potential, and the market was certainly in a bit of a hype cycle. But what's changed, or actually what I would like to describe as, say, the silver lining to one of that, to that cycle, is that a lot of people bought their first coins. They've gone through that mental hurdle of, I don't know what this is, I don't know how to buy it. The financial incentives drove them to acquire crypto, whichever channel they did that through, and to familiarize themselves with it. So that's probably one of the first and the hardest steps to take. What we have now is millions of users just on our platform alone who hold some crypto. And the next phase is, what more can you do with it? How do you extend it beyond just the financial upside, but to use it to pay for things, to use it as a store of value, to use it as a money remittance tool? And it's all those use cases that I think are incredibly exciting, as we look forward.
Mm-hmm. So as you explained to me right before we started recording, you're a trained cryptographer. Having studied all sorts of complex computer science topics and math, no doubt. Coinbase was so popular kind of during the crypto boom of 2017, if we can call it that, because it was a very easy, low friction way for average retail customers to buy and sell major crypto coins. On kind of like the more extreme end of the crypto community, it kind of like didn't necessarily deliver on the promise of crypto, in that there's a whole public key, private key, like maximum safety, because you kind of you alone hold your hold your private key, you're storing your tokens in cold storage, but at the same time, that's just such a huge barrier for the average individual to actually start engaging with this ecosystem, as you mentioned before. And I guess I'll kind of pull a few things together here. You're developing the custody offering. Some of the hesitance of institutional players to get involved in crypto had to do with effectively the lack of that infrastructure for custody of crypto assets. How do you, as a cryptographer and someone who's in addition to that very kind of experienced in the space, think about that trade-off between, or maybe it's not even a trade-off, maybe it's an optimal solution that's in the process of being developed between security, privacy, and kind of functionality?
I think it's exactly that there is some sort of middle ground, and that middle ground depends on the use cases that you want to interact with the ecosystem for, between centralization or the use of a centralized entity and controlling your own keys and how you secure them. You could technically, as you said, the dream was that you control your own keys, and or the promise is that you control your own keys, and that's how you manage. That's how crypto gives power to the individual users, by cutting out the middleman. In reality, I think that benefit still exists, and it will, it is foundational to what crypto is. But you can think of a layer 2 of services that are built on top of that, which users can interact with, and that perhaps take that technology more mainstream by making it user friendly. And in that transition, there are compromises that are made in terms of, for example, Coinbase exists and we control our users' keys. But it doesn't take away from the underlying crypto itself and your ability to control that. So your ability as an individual to make that choice to control your own wallet or to interact with a centralized exchange. And then there's a trade-offs that go with that. If you lose your private key, you can't recover your funds. But with Coinbase, you click on forgot your password and you get it back. So I think what you're looking at is there'll be a spectrum of use cases and reasons for interacting with the system, either through centralized parties or directly with the chains, and people will find that balance on what they prefer, what they're comfortable with, and that's the fundamental difference from the traditional system. You don't have that choice today, but you do in the crypto world.
What types of second level services do you expect to be built on top of the kind of foundational crypto infrastructure?
A lot of it is what. So I think the financial system will almost reinvent itself on crypto. So you're looking at the last 200 years of the evolution of the financial system being built on top of crypto, and there are services that will be very base layer, where the users interact with the chains, and others are provided through third parties like ourselves. Everything from things like custody to consumer-friendly wallets where keys are controlled. There are two great examples. One example of a product where a centralized system like ourselves, we provide the solution, but we are not involved in the transaction ourselves, is Coinbase Commerce. So what we've done is we've created effectively a tool that allows you to use your crypto in your wallets that you control to spend at merchant sites. And we're not involved in that transaction at all. We don't control it. What we tend to do is we just facilitate the acceptance of that by providing the...
It's like merchant acquiring or something.
Correct.
For crypto,
yeah. So that's an example of actually a tool we, as a centralized party, were able to facilitate and develop that still retains, gives control to the customer and the merchant in that case.
Okay, so effectively, analogs of traditional, financial services products and services. This maybe leads us on to a slightly broader question, which is kind of what's the future of the token, of the cryptocurrency as a concept? Is it Is it an infrastructure play where it's, blockchain that's kind of creating greater efficiencies in replacing financial architecture, and the end result to the customer is more or less the same? Is it suddenly every conceivable asset is being tokenized and traded in real time? Is it is cryptocurrency actually a currency? Should it be a store of value? Is the value of the ecosystem actually in tokenization? Is it utility tokens? What's your kind of implicit feeling about, if we're looking back 5 years from now, kind of what the main thrust of innovation has been?
I think the most exciting part about this is the fact that there are so many avenues or use cases that you can list in the question as potential applications for this. I think, as I think about this, it doesn't have to be one thing. It's not exclusive. It's what Bitcoin did was introduce us to a combination of technologies that worked in tandem, the distributed ledger, or whether it was a blockchain or encryption, which has been around for a long time. But it was the combining of those together and how they're used. And what you'll end up with is blockchain is broken off into its own thing and is being applied across sectors from logistics to healthcare to all sorts of things. And it'll have, wherever it fits in, it solves a problem where you need an immutable record of things. It will be, and you want to shift control back to the users, it'll find its place. I think crypto itself is incredibly exciting in terms of its implication to financial services and its ability to help us rethink on how we store value, and the world I see, and a lot of people say that actually centralized currencies don't make sense. I think they do. I think where we're headed is a world where you have centralized currencies that are issued by governments that realize not the dream of crypto, but the fundamental benefits that you can gain from the technology in terms of we shouldn't be printing money on paper anymore. We can track it in far more sophisticated and better ways, and crypto does that. So I think we're headed to a world where you'll carry a digital pound, a digital dollar, euros, etc. But then you'll also have the choice in terms of how you store your value, and it'll be between centralized and decentralized currencies. It could be a choice between monetary policies and how I don't have a choice today because most of my value as a British citizen is stored in pound sterling, and that's the ecosystem I interact with. Whereas I think in the future, I would have some sort of control and ability to store my value and interact with it as I will. And that particularly works in countries where it suffer from hyperinflation, right? Because you almost turn currency into a product of the government, and then you open it up as a choice, which is incredibly exciting. You talked about tokenization of assets. I think that by its very nature, it's just about establishing ownership of a particular asset and being able to trade and transfer that in a digitally native instrument, which is the token. So that creates the potential for markets, for development in the current markets in a way that's not existed before. Some basic things like 24/7 markets, for example. You can have things like interoperability between tokens, for example. So it just the nature of being able to tokenize and trade things more efficiently and easily just simply moves that market along.
Okay, so there are a number of avenues that likely will kind of continue to develop and play out in parallel. Where do you see Coinbase providing the most value, being most successful?
I think one thing we've done, so our focus, I'll start by saying our focus as a business is to create an open financial system. So I'm going to exclude everything that's non-financial from areas that we're not focusing on, right? Within the financial system, what we're looking at is our role is to either, and it has been historically, to serve as an on and off ramp into crypto. So we continue to focus on that significantly. And what that means is we maintain the right banking relationships, the right regulator relationships for for us to allow to continue serving as that on and off ramp into crypto. So that's the first stage for anyone stepping into crypto, is the on and off ramps. Once you have crypto, it's what you can do with it. And I think that's the second part of our role in this ecosystem, and probably one that requires more effort, or you're kind of seeding an entire ecosystem. So if we can build it, we are building use cases around being able to spend crypto. Our Coinbase Commerce solution is an example of that, where you're using it as a payment instrument. Where we can buy it, we're looking to buy companies that are aligned with our mission. Earn.com is a microtask marketplace that's based on crypto, and that again drives utility for it. Other acquisitions, as we look at the tokenization of securities, we've acquired a group of companies called Keystone in the US that provides us with a broker-dealer license, and they help us unlock the trading of tokens and the use of securitized tokens in this ecosystem. So once you are in crypto, it's about what are the use cases today, what are the use cases for tomorrow, and how do you grow this space? And that's what we're trying to target. What benefits can we bring to the community today, and where do we need to be in a few years' time for this to succeed?
Tell me a bit more about the institutional custody proposition you guys are developing, and kind of what the what's the pulse of the institutional community vis-a-vis crypto at this point?
There's a lot of interest in it at the minute, simply because institutions go through unlike consumers, institutions' decision process and their ability to dive in, it takes more time. There's a lot of due diligence involved. And what we're actually finding is that decisions that were perhaps made earlier in the year are now materializing into actual solutions and partnerships, and after 6-8 months of conversations. So we continue to see a lot of interest in this space. In fact, we had to restrict the number of businesses we work with in the first tranche of custody. We had so much interest in it, just so we could prove the product out with a small group and then open it up to a wider audience. So I think as a business and as an industry in general, there's a continued interest from institutions for solutions that they can interact with in a compliant and safe manner.
Zeeshan, what's the best way for people to connect with you and find out more about Coinbase's work?
We as a business generally we try and be as open as we can to the community. So the Coinbase blog is probably your best source. Leaders across the business share their thoughts, our decision-making process. Our founder provides a quarterly update every quarter of everything we've worked on. It's probably your best resource, as well as our for more breaking news, our social media handles.
Excellent. And people can open Coinbase accounts by the app or website?
They can across the US and Europe. We support the Coinbase. The Coinbase app is fully supported.
Zeeshan Feroz, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning into Rebank. If you like today's show, reach out. Follow us on Twitter at Rebank Podcast and join the conversation. For more on banking, fintech, and the future, check out our regular content at www.bankingthefuture.com.